You see, one of the biggest mistakes men make, especially when they really like a woman, is offering too much validation too early, too often, and without it being earned. On the surface, it feels harmless. You think you're just being nice, supportive, attentive, but what you're actually doing, unconsciously, is handing over your power in exchange for her approval. And that dynamic shifts everything. Because the moment a woman senses that your attention is too easily given, it loses value. Constant validation, texting her that she's beautiful every morning, praising everything she says, liking every photo, constantly affirming her, even when she hasn't done anything to deepen the connection, signals one thing: you are trying to win her instead of being someone she has to earn herself. At first, she might appreciate it. Who doesn't like compliments, right? But over time, that flattery starts to feel empty. She begins to wonder if this man gives out his validation so freely, what does it even mean? Does he see me clearly, or is he just infatuated with an image of me? And here's where the psychology kicks in. Human beings, men and women alike, place higher value on what is scarce, what is earned, what carries weight. When you flood her with praise, you strip away that sense of earned intimacy you remove the mystery, and without mystery, attraction fades. It's not because women are cruel or ungrateful. It's because the emotional polarity that creates romantic tension depends on an unspoken sense of challenge, depth, and groundedness. She wants to feel chosen, yes, but by a man who chooses from a place of discernment, not desperation. This is where most men misinterpret vulnerability. They think being open and emotionally available means they must constantly express how they feel. But true emotional strength isn't about constant expression. It's about intentional expression. Compliments mean more when they're rare. Affirmation is powerful when it's earned. Mystery doesn't mean being emotionally unavailable. It means you're not throwing your heart at her feet, hoping she'll pick it up. When you learn to sit in your own energy, to validate yourself first, something shifts. She senses that. She sees a man who isn't chasing, isn't performing, isn't trying to impress. You become intriguing, not because you're withholding, but because your attention feels like a reward, not a given. And that reward becomes something she wants to earn, not escape. So remember this: if your validation is free, your presence becomes cheap. But when your praise carries meaning, when it's backed by confidence and timing, it creates emotional gravity. And that gravity pulls her in not because you forced it, but because you earned it. Don't offer your value like loose change. Let it carry weight. Let it be a mirror of your self-worth, because the moment you stop trying to prove yourself is the moment she starts seeing you as a man worth knowing. Now let's talk about something that quietly kills attraction, often without men even realizing it. Over-accommodation. That constant urge to please, to agree, to avoid tension at all costs. On the surface, it looks like kindness. You're being attentive, flexible, cooperative, but beneath it, what's actually happening is a slow erosion of your boundaries. And here's the truth most men miss. When you give up your boundaries to keep a woman happy, she doesn't feel more loved. She feels less respect for you. Because women are not drawn to the man who bends in every direction just to keep the peace. They're drawn to the man who knows who he is and won't lose himself just to win her approval. It's a subtle but powerful shift in energy. When you constantly cancel your plans for her, agree with her even when you don't, tolerate things that go against your values, you're not showing love. You're showing fear. Fear of rocking the boat, fear of rejection, of being them alone. This is not diupnelIanettractive, yourself, that you're not root wearens ed, that your sense of self depends on how she feels about you in any given moment. And over time, she begins to feel like she's in control of the dynamic, not because she wants that power, but because you've quietly handed it to her. From a psychological standpoint, boundaries are not walls, they're signals. They communicate to others how we expect to be treated, what we value, and what we're willing to tolerate. When a man abandons those boundaries, a woman may feel powerful in the short term, but in the long run, she loses emotional safety. Because deep down, she knows, if this man can't stand up to me, how can he stand up for me? If he's too afraid to say no, how will he protect his values or mine when it matters? It's not about being difficult. It's not about being controlling. It's about being clear. A man with boundaries doesn't need to yell, doesn't need to dominate. His power is calm, it's quiet, but it's unmistakable. He knows where he ends and where others begin. And that self-possession is what creates deep respect and enduring desire. You can still be kind, you can still be attentive, but don't confuse love with submission. Don't trade your identity for closeness, because when you constantly abandon yourself to keep a woman interested, you're teaching her to lose interest. You become predictable, safe in the wrong ways, and eventually invisible. So here's the challenge. Stop being afraid of disappointing her. Start being more afraid of disappointing yourself. Because the moment you choose self-respect over people-pleasing is the moment she starts seeing you not just as a man she can like, but as a man she can truly trust. One of the most misunderstood aspects of emotional connection is vulnerability. We're in an age where men are encouraged to open up, to share their emotions, to let down their guard, and rightly so. But here's where things go wrong. When vulnerability becomes emotional overexposure. When you begin to share every insecurity, every fear, every mental storm without any filter, direction, or grounding, you don't build intimacy, you start to erode it. Now, let's be clear, vulnerability in its healthy form is strength. It's self-awareness. It's the ability to show depth, to trust someone enough to reveal what's real. But when it's unregulated, when it turns into emotional dumping, it doesn't bring you closer. It creates emotional pressure. It shifts the dynamic. Instead of being her equal, you start looking like someone who needs her to stabilize his internal chaos. And that's a very different energy from emotional maturity. You see, women don't lose interest because you have emotions. They lose interest when you need them to hold your emotions for you. There's a difference. A strong man can say, "I've been struggling with something lately," and speak from a place of grounded reflection. That's attractive. But a man who spirals into an emotional monologue every time something goes wrong, that begins to feel like a burden, and a woman doesn't want to feel like your therapist. She wants to feel like your partner. Emotion without containment is volatility, and no matter how deeply a woman may care for you, when you consistently bring her problems without bringing stability, it slowly chips away at her trust. Not just trust in you as a person, but trust in your capacity to lead your own life. She begins to question whether she's safe in your emotional presence. And when emotional safety disappears, desire follows right behind it. From a psychological lens, humans are wired to seek both connection and security. When you offer deep connection but lack internal security, that connection feels unstable. A man who lacks emotional regulation begins to feel unpredictable, and unpredictability, contrary to popular belief, doesn't excite women. It unsettles them. What you need to remember is this: real vulnerability is not just honesty. It's *anchored honesty*. It's not about dumping everything the moment you feel it. It's about processing, reflecting, and then choosing what to share and how. When you do that, you're not only showing her your heart, you're showing her your strength. So no, you don't have to pretend to be invincible. You don't have to hide your pain or suppress your truth. But you do have to own it before you offer it. Because when a woman sees that you can feel deeply and remains centered, she sees a man she can lean on, not a man she'll have to carry. Emotional depth without emotional leadership is chaos. But when you lead yourself through your storms, you invite her into your calm. There's a moment in every relationship, sometimes early, sometimes later, when the question of leadership quietly shows up. Not leadership in the traditional, controlling sense, but in energy, direction, presence, and here's where many men go wrong. They begin to seek permission instead of leading thinking they're being polite, respectful, or modern. But what they're really doing is outsourcing their power. And when that happens, attraction suffers. It starts subtly. You're constantly asking, is this okay? Do you mind if should I do this? At first, it might seem thoughtful. You want her to feel included, considered, but over time, this habit becomes something else. It becomes a pattern of hesitation. And hesitation is the opposite of masculine energy. Women don't want to mother your choices. They don't want to be the emotional or logistical compass for every step you take. They want to feel the presence of a man who knows who he is, where he's going, and can bring her into that direction with clarity, not confusion. Now, this doesn't mean you become some authoritarian figure who ignores her thoughts or feelings. Leadership is not domination. It's decisiveness anchored in respect. It's the ability to take initiative, to plan, to guide, while still being open to feedback. A man who leads doesn't silence her voice. He simply doesn't lose himself in trying to always accommodate it. From a psychological standpoint, leadership speaks directly to a woman's subconscious sense of security. When a man hesitates constantly or defaults to her for every decision, she starts to question, does he trust himself? Can I rely on his judgment? Can he hold the weight of a shared life, or will I have to carry it for both of us? It's not a conscious checklist. It's a felt sense. And when that sense of certainty is missing, so is attraction. What makes this even more dangerous is that many good men confuse indecision with being emotionally available. They think that always asking for her opinion, always waiting for her cues, always following her lead is what makes a healthy relationship. But in truth, it often leaves the woman feeling emotionally burdened, because leadership is about responsibility. And when you avoid that responsibility by making her lead, you're not being kind, you're being passive. The irony is, the more you lead with quiet confidence, the more freedom she feels. Because when you're steady, when you take the weight off her shoulders, when you say, I've got this, something softens in her, she can relax, she can trust, and in that trust, intimacy grows. So if you're always waiting for her to decide, always seeking her permission to move forward, understand this. You're not being respectful. You're abandoning your masculine core. A man who cannot lead his own life will never be trusted to lead within a relationship. Stop asking for the roadmap. Be the roadmap. Because when you step into that role with authenticity and clarity, she doesn't resist your lead. She's drawn to it. There's a quiet danger in modern relationships that often disguises itself as romance. It's the idea that once you find a woman you truly care about, everything else, your hobbies, your friends, your goals, should take a backseat. She becomes your world, your reason, your sole source of happiness, And while that might sound poetic, it's actually one of the quickest ways to lose her attraction. Because when you make her the center of your universe it doesn't make her feel adored. It makes her feel pressured and eventually smothered. At first, the attention feels flattering. You're always available, always attentive, always prioritizing her above everything else. But slowly, something shifts. She starts to sense that your life revolves around her approval, that without her, you lack direction. And here's where the psychological disconnect begins. A woman wants to join a man's life, not become his life. She wants to feel chosen, yes, but by a man who already has something rich, full, and meaningful that she can step into, not someone who's abandoned it all in the name of love. The truth is, attraction thrives in polarity, and polarity is born from independence. When you give up the very things that made you interesting in the first place, your ambition, your drive, your curiosity, you lose the edge that drew her in. And now, instead of being the man with purpose, you become the man whose purpose is her and that, ironically, creates emotional weight she never asked to carry. From a psychological standpoint, humans are drawn to people with a sense of identity. A woman feels safest, most intrigued, and most emotionally connected to a man who hasn't lost himself in the relationship. Not because he's detached, but because he's still deeply connected to his vision, to his growth, to his own path. That's what keeps the energy between two people alive when each person continues to evolve individually, even as they grow together. When you orbit around her, what you're signaling is that your sense of self is fragile, that your emotional stability depends on her responses, her availability, her mood. And even if she loves you, that level of dependence starts to feel more like emotional weight than romantic connection. Because love isn't about merging into one identity. It's about two whole people walking side by side, not one person trailing behind. A woman wants to feel chosen by a man who still belongs to himself, a man who can love her deeply without losing his direction . That's the kind of presence that builds not just attraction, but long-term respect. So if you've been slowly dimming your own light to make her feel more seen, understand this. She didn't fall for you because you had nothing going on. She fell for you because you had something worth following. Never abandon your mission in the name of love, because when you lead with purpose, she doesn't feel left out. She feels inspired to walk beside you. There's a silent game that plays out in relationships, subtle, unspoken, and deeply psychological. Women, often without even realizing it, test men. Not to manipulate or punish, but to gauge strength to feel on a subconscious level whether the man in front of them is grounded, emotionally sturdy, and capable of holding space, not just for her, but for himself. And here's where many men fail, not because they react too aggressively, but because they do nothing. They ignore the tests hoping that by staying calm, quiet, or unbothered, they'll appear emotionally mature. But in truth, they're revealing something else entirely: fear, avoidance, a lack of self-respect. Let's be honest, these tests don't always come dressed as blatant disrespect. Sometimes it's a sarcastic comment, a subtle boundary push, a moment where she questions your integrity, flirts with tension, or challenges your opinion. And in those moments, how you respond tells her everything. If you let it slide not once, but repeatedly, she starts to feel that you're not a man who stands on his own values. That you avoid discomfort not because you're wise, but because you're afraid of losing her, and nothing kills attraction faster than the scent of fear masked as fake peace. You see, Boundaries are not enforced with noise, they're enforced with presence. It's not about snapping, shouting, or controlling. It's about calmly holding your ground, saying, "That's not okay with me," without raising your voice. Walking away when the line is crossed, not to punish her, but to protect your energy. Because when a woman sees that you are unwilling to abandon your principles just to avoid tension, she doesn't resent you for it. She respects you more. She feels safer with you, not because you tolerate everything, but because you don't have too. From a psychological point of view, tests are her way of asking, can I trust you to stay strong, even when I push? If the answer is yes, she leans in. If the answer is no, if you fold, flinch, or freeze, she slowly withdraws, often without saying a word. Because what she's sensing isn't just weakness, it's emotional instability. And no matter how good a man may be on paper, if he can't protect the boundaries of his own self-worth, he can't protect the space they're building together. And here's what most men never realize: ignoring bad behavior doesn't make you peaceful, it makes you passive. Women don't want a man who accepts everything in the name of love. They want a man who sees clearly, speaks calmly, and stands firmly. A man whose silence isn't fear, it's choice. A man who will walk away, not because he doesn't care, but because he cares about himself enough not to stay where he's disrespected. So remember, this being calm doesn't mean being quiet, and being kind doesn't mean being blind. When you stop tolerating what chips away at your power, she won't see you as difficult. She'll see you as *, unshakable *.